Master of Ceremonies, Mrs. Paula Porter, and Mr. Oliver Watt, the Honorable Norma Walters, Custos Rotolorum of St. Anne, representing His Excellency the Governor General, the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen. The Most Honorable Juliet Holness, my wife. Our honoree, my mentor, my political father, the Most Honorable Edward Philip George Seaga, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, among many other accolades that we could place on his shoulder today. His Excellency Tian Chi, and if you have time, Excellency, we will sit over a cup of cornmeal porridge and we will... I think it is appropriate to recognize the high level, the high quality, the high standard of performances that we have been treated to today. This certainly must dispel any notion that our cultural assets, which represents brand Jamaica, that the creativity of our people is well preserved and is a legacy for generations to come. It is appropriate that I say this because Mr. Seaga started out by studying the culture of the people. So he knows it from the experience, but he knows it as well from a deep study of it. And much of his life has been dedicated to preserving that cultural asset, which is now what defines largely brand Jamaica. Brand Jamaica is the patrimony of all Jamaicans, and every single Jamaican has a right to benefit from it. And I want to assure Jamaicans, particularly the creative community, that your government stands in support of you, and your government will do everything to ensure that you can benefit from the patrimony of your forefathers. This would also be a great way of honoring the work of our former Prime Minister, our former leader, a man who has sacrificed so much and has done so much in preserving and promoting the culture of Jamaica. So that is one keynote. Press. It is with a sense of pride and honor that today we pay tribute to the Most Honorable Edward Philip George Seaga, one of Jamaica's most outstanding visionary, leader, and statesman. He is a naturally creative mind, which even now is fertile with ideas. I should know, I get the calls every day. But Mr. Seaga is not just a thinker. Thinkers are important, conceptualizers are important, but they are one element of the framework of success. He is a doer. But more important than being a doer, he is a leader in doing things. So you could say that Mr. Seaga was consummate. Not perfect. But he strove to be excellent. He has dedicated his life to being a conceptualizer and builder of many of Jamaica's institutions, the architect of many of our major infrastructure, the preserver of our heritage and traditions, the promoter of our culture, and the developer of our economy. It is said that the greatest use of life is to spend it for something that will outlast life. Mr. Seaga will live on through his work because he has spent his life building institutions and infrastructure that define our nation and provide service and value. Indeed, a legacy for generations now and generations to come. Today we name this highway in honor of his contribution, his work, his dedication, his sacrifice, and his life. We memorialize his work, his legacy, in a physical manifestation, and we inscribe his name on it, that it may live on in the minds of those who own the future, that they may be inspired by it and seek to make similar, if not greater, contributions to building our nation. I wish to focus on Mr. Seaga's contribution in establishing the Urban Development Corporation, the downtown development plans, the development of Kingston generally, and of course, the development of the town of Ocho Rios. The highway, which spans several administrations, links the two economic centers, Kingston and Ocho Rios. Kingston in the south, Ocho Rios in the north. It is therefore symbolically appropriate to accord Mr. Seaga this honor of naming the highway which links two significant bodies of his work. However, I have another key message to deliver. Even outside of the symbolic appropriateness, Mr. Seaga's indisputable body of work and service deserves recognition. As we seek to build a nation, there must be space carved out in the competitive political landscape for magnanimity, respect for leaders, value for national sacrifice, and a certain decency and honor in public affairs. Our politics must rise above mean-spiritedness and a selfish sense of entitlement to the nation's assets. With this in a good mind, I wish to assure the nation that we will continue the tradition of our great leaders in building infrastructure and building institutions. We also assure that we will recognize the work, contribution, and sacrifice of those who have dedicated their life to the development of this country, regardless of political and tribal considerations. Today, we are here to pay homage and to leave a legacy for generations to understand the importance of vision, the importance of commitment and selflessness and dedication and love for the nation. Today we are here to recognize the work and impact of Edward Philip George Seaga. On behalf of a very grateful nation, we extend sincere gratitude to Mr. Seaga for his service, commitment, and love of Jamaica. I now, therefore, take great pleasure to formally declare this highway the Edward Seaga Highway.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I now ask you to direct your attention to the video screen for an abridged version of the life and achievements of our honored guest, the Most Honorable Edward Seaga.
First meeting, we had a discussion about agriculture, and he had very practical, very novel ideas about how to improve agriculture, and it's around the technology. The mother of his time.
Edward Philip George Seaga, for me, is an icon.
Putting Jamaica back on track in the 1980s would have been the most pleasing.
Landmark development in terms of managing the built environment, the development of the built environment would be the role he played in the UDC, which then laid the platform and the plans for much of the urban development of Jamaica. Quite a bit of effort was placed in the development of the Kingston waterfront.
At that time, we had a lot of finger piers going off into the ocean, and no one conceived that we could have the Central Business District here. The Bank of Jamaica was relocated, and then very shortly, the various buildings and blocks took shape until we had what we have now.
He's a nation builder. All his life, that man has demonstrated that he believes in the building of a nation. That's his passion.
In this triennium period, one of the most significant decisions taken is the recommendation to approve an expenditure of $2 million over the remaining period of this triennium to build up the university presence in the non-campus territories.
From the time he started the Heart Trust, which spoke to an alternative or parallel, developmental path for our youths, it began to speak to the understanding that education and training in its broadest context were needed for the forward march of this country.
He established most of the cultural institutions in this country. I remember very much the fact that he conceptualized the Edna Manley Center. At that time, it was not called the Edna Manley, but the Cultural Training Center. And he also conceptualized the CPTC, where he felt that it was important to capture the culture of the people and to document those things. And he also felt that it was important to harness all that culture in the performing arts, the fine arts, all the other art forms, and to train the talent that is so rich and that's so diverse among our people.
I had a first-hand experience of Jamaican folk music and the religious music as well, revival and Kumina and things like that. And of course, that to me was the heart and soul of the old Jamaican folk culture. So I extended that in the late 50s, about 10 years later, to being a producer of Jamaican music. And I was doing so just at the time when the original Jamaican music was emerging. After that, we had the success of the Jamaican music abroad with Millie Small. That was pride. Then Carl Crawford went and run this world. So I started with on a high, with the people feeling proud of this little country.
Somebody had to start the process, and he was the one that had the vision to start the process that many people that came after had to build on that foundation.
What Mr. Seaga did was to recognize the way of life of the ordinary Jamaican and what made the ordinary Jamaican feel inspired.
It is not in dispute that Edward Seaga has been the principal engineer and developer of independent Jamaica. His programs and vision for Jamaica are written in the extensive range of projects and institutions which spans the entire field of national development.
The linkages are now set for access to the Hellshire Hills. But the causeway also does something else. It lays the first link in what is to be a new chain of roadways which will enable traffic to be routed from Palisadoes Airport directly across to St. Catherine without coming through Kingston, and vice versa.
It was always his dream for connectivity to connect Kingston, Ocho-Rios, Montego Bay.
So it is quite fitting that two of the areas in which he had spent quite a bit of effort and time in developing are now linked with the North-South Highway.
A brief peek at a patriot, politician, and protagonist in the building of culture and national institutions. But what about hearing from the man himself? I agree. We now invite the Most Honorable Edward Philip George Seaga to give a response.
Please be seated. Today is indeed an extraordinary moment
in my life. And I thank the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister, for understanding that point and accepting that it should be worthy of this honor. I therefore wish to commend him and his wife, the Most Honorable Juliet Holness. Just as I wish to commend another wife, my own wife, my daughter and my son. Let's stand. Separate from those commendations, the government of China is to be rated as having played the most significant role in the development of this project. They took it on when others failed, and they succeeded. I think as we drive this highway and see walls of stone, we must recognize what they are. It is a cut through a hill, through a mountain. And nobody in their sensible mind would want to cut through so many mountains except the genius from the government of China. So I do thank them for making it a beautiful, flat highway that people enjoy traveling on. And a speedy one. I've covered without speeding the distance from Falmouth to Kingston in 3/4 of an hour on one New Year's Day. So they're practically joined. Just a little 60-mile separation. But that 60 mile now has been made 3/4 of an hour, or even less. And it's only natural that it should be so, because it means that we can traverse that distance in little time, and therefore living at the end of each point, make it an easy run to visit the other. I know someone who lives in Runaway Bay, and she goes to work in Kingston. And I'm sure there are others who live in Kingston and come to work in Ocho Rios. But the telling point in all of this is that the Prime Minister recognized not just the linkage, but the importance that we cannot build cities and towns that are separated from each other without having at least a link to which to join them. And that link is Kingston and Ocho Rios. And I mention that because there have been two of the projects that I have created, and indeed perhaps the two greatest. And when it came to the fact that they were so easily joined, I said, well, that highway should be named after me. And I wasn't embarrassed in telling the Prime Minister so. And in his wisdom, he realized it and accepted it. You see, Kingston was created on a waterfront of finger piers sticking out into the sea. And that prevented the unloading of ships, because the unloading then was being done by a crane that ran on the shore and unloaded each ship. So we had to remove those. And the owners came to me and said, we want some land over in Newport West, which is now being created, and we want to be recited there. I accepted that proposal, took it to Cabinet, which approved it, and it happened. This one, Ocherios, came about by coming to a political meeting in February 1967, at the end of which month was a general election. And thinking of what to say at the meeting, it wasn't until I reached Fern Gully that I said, I can talk about the harbor in Ocherios and making it into a real harbor with all the benefits that can come to the area. And that's what I did. I said, in 1 year, we're going to create a beach where there's no beach, 80 acres in size, and from then on, we'll be creating hotels and apartments and other things. And it started in 1 year. And we owned it all. And we parceled it out to investors so that they could build what you see today as Ocherios, which was never there before. After Ocherios, using the UDC, which I established to take care of these institutions and projects that were being built, we went to Montego Bay, but there was little that could be done at that point because of the nature of the town and the jumble. But we went on to Negril. And I'm a man that don't like holidays. I think they're a waste of time. But my wife convinced me on that Labor Day to come to Negril and to have a rest. But I did that for half a morning. And then I jumped in my car and I started to roam. And as I roamed what is now the Negril Highway, named after Norman Manley, there was this area that had a lot of mangroves that I couldn't see the sea. So I said to a little man who I picked up on the way, "Brother, what is behind that?" He said, "Come, boss, you don't say nothing yet." He took me through the mangroves, and when I got to the end of that, what a beautiful beach I beholded. I've never seen anything like that anywhere in my life. I was so enthralled by it that I begged his pardon, and I said, I'd taken off all my clothes because I want to swim in there. And I did that. But I didn't really think of when I came out, I'm going to dry myself. So I had to use a chamois from the car, rub me down. But I said to this little man, "Who owns this land?" He said, "Mr. MacLeod." I said, "Where he lives?" "See, right up on that hill." I said, "Okay, you think him is there?" "Yeah, man, he's not live there at all." So that evening, I went up to the hill in a little house and saw Mr. Ivan MacLeod, who owned the entire property of Negril, Green Bay, and the town of Negril. 6,000 acres. I was a youngster, 37, but I said to him, "Mr. MacLeod, you'd like to sell this land?" He said, "Yes, my son." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a valuator from government to check it out and come back with a price. And after that, we can deal with it." He said, "Any price you come back with is all right with me." I didn't go to Cabinet because they were thinking I was getting a little too far ahead. So I went back after the evaluator had brought in the value, and it was a very reasonable value for 6,000 acres. Then I went to Cabinet and said, "Any who live near, go and look at it." And the people who came back said, "You are right. it is one of the most beautiful areas in Jamaica. So we bought Negril. We went on down the stream. We bought Ockendown. We bought Mount Edgecombe, which is a big pimento property. And I went around in that direction until we came back to Kingston. And when we came back to Kingston, something occurred to me that this Hellshire Hill, if we don't do something about it, somebody else is going to do it. And the government doesn't want anybody to do anything. So I bought Hellshire Hill for £20,000, the whole hill. Salt Pond, which was next to it, was my shooting ground in the days when I used to shoot. So I knew every corner of it. And I bought that for £15,000. Caymanas, which was next to all of those, I bought that for something like £20,000. And so I went on a buying spree right around the country. I bought Negril, I bought Seville, which is the last stop of Columbus's journey around Jamaica on his 5th voyage. Having done all that, I declared it to be a land bank. And to tell you the truth, although my Prime Minister is here, I never tell Cabinet about it. Because if I did, somebody would say I want 5 acres, another one want 10 acres, and somebody said I want 2. And my pledge to it was nobody getting nothing of that. Until you come with a development plan, you never get nothing. So it was kept in secret until the time when the developments arose. And they arose in the beginning of 1980 when I asked UNESCO to create a plan for the development of our 3 most historic areas, Port Royal, Spanish Town, and Seville. And they created a plan with 25 advisors. I've never heard of that before. 25. And they brought it to me in a huge box. And when I looked at it, I was flabbergasted. Every detail was included. We have now started on Port Royal, but the next one has to be Spanish Town. And that one, I want something very, very important for you. I want that to be an Afro-Jamaican Institute and Museum. That is where emancipation came about, on the steps of the Spanish Town Square. I want to develop Seville, because being the last stop of Columbus, he had to leave his ship. It was sinking. And we are still trying to find it, but I rather doubt that it's gone too far down. At any rate, we will do something to show the kind of ship that it was. And so the journey of the UDC began and continues. The only blot in that journey was when it was used to build up Jamaica, which was work for small contractors, not the UDC. But we got it back on track again. And now it is building once more and more projects to enhance its own ability to do so and to enhance Jamaica. Culture has been my most endearing endeavor. It's not my only endeavor, but it is my most endearing. And in doing cultural activities, I do them with my heart. I wanted Jamaican music to be brought to the front on the stage for Jamaicans to hear. So I sent Olive Lewin out and I said, find every Jamaican tune and bring them here. And she brought them. And I established the Jamaica Festival in which they were going to play a part. And we started the journey of popularizing Jamaican music. At that time, I didn't know that other Jamaicans were doing something close to that. They were bringing out popular Jamaican music. And that popular music became popular indeed, very popular. When you think of Bob Marley, when you think of Jimmy Cliff, when you think of Ernest Smith, when you think of Dennis Brown, when you think of Desmond Dekker, and all of those and many more artists. I brought this with me because tears come to my eyes. It is a waste for us not to make that one of the stellar contributions of Jamaicans to world culture, not Jamaican culture. So I honor Ernest Smith this evening, who gave us just some of his remarkable compositions. I honor the Tivoli Gardens dance troupe because they are the most successful dance troupe in Jamaica, having won far more gold medals than anybody else. And I think it's time for me to sit down, take a rest, but I can't do it. I don't know how to do that. And there's a little song that says, you lick him down, you pick him up. Hard man for dead. You lick him down, you pick him up. Hard man for dead. Well, it's true, I'm 88. That must be a hard man today. But, no matter, whether it's 88 or 98, I'm still going to be doing my best for the country. I won't tell you that I'll be active all that time. I owe a long vacation to my family, and I have to take that. But my mind will always be on Jamaica and Jamaican things. And so, in the same way that the man who owned a zoo couldn't find a gorilla, and he went out on the street to find a man who had the dimensions of a gorilla. And he brought him back to the zoo and put a gorilla suit on him, with a mask and everything. And he taught him, yo, 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 yo. And the gorilla learned it very quick. So he put him in a cage next to the lion. And the gorilla was very offended and went up to the net between them and said, yo, 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 yo. And the lion went over to him and said, shut your mouth, you want me to lose a little work? So it is time for me to shut my mouth. And with God's blessings to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seaga. And before he sits, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually now going to have the symbolic unveiling of the sign, which will adorn the highway in short order. We ask you, the other members of the audience, please to be seated, and we invite the following persons to join us for the unveiling. The Prime Minister and the Most Honorable Mrs. Holness, the Most Honorable Edward Seaga and the Most Honorable Mrs. Seaga, Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, Minister of Local Government and Community Development, Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. Once the party is in place, there will be a flourish of the trumpets of the Jamaica Military Band fanfare team, giving the cue for the Most Honorable Mrs. Holness, Honorable Mrs. Seaga, the ribbon and unveil the sign. And for the official photograph, we ask the following persons to join the party. Honorable Norma Walters, Custos Rotolorium. Could you join the party, please? His Excellency Tien Chi, Mr. Philip Henriquez, Mr. Liu Chin. Could you join the party for the official photograph, please? Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the ceremony for the renaming of the North-South Highway, which has now become the Edward Seaga Highway.